just like stand around the building. Yeah. Okay. De la Sierra Morena, cielito lindo, y van bajando un par de ojitos negros, cielito lindo de contrabando. Ay, 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 canta y no llores, porque cantando se alegran, cielito lindo, los corazones. Canten con nosotros. Ay, 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 ay. Canta y no llores, porque cantando se alegran, cielito lindo, los corazones. Stand up here. Come on.
Deja que salga la luna, deja que se meta el sol.
Fantastico. Welcome, everyone. I'm David Elwood. I'm the Dean of the Harvard Kennedy School. Welcome to the John F. Kennedy Jr. Forum. This has been the place of many great events and many remarkable speakers, but I have my very special pleasure tonight to welcome to our podium a graduate, and a remarkable graduate at that. Before introducing tonight's speaker to you, though, I want to acknowledge a few distinguished guests, and also to say a couple of words in introduction. First of all, I'd very much like to recognize the First Lady of Mexico, Margarita Zavala de Calderón, right here. Mrs. Zavala is the only First Lady of Mexico to have served in its Congress prior to assuming her role as First Lady. She was a professor of law. And in this country, sometimes First Ladies become presidents. Sometimes not. I'm not suggesting anything, please. She's also quite familiar with the school because she too took courses here at Harvard. Also with us tonight is an extraordinary delegation, ranging from the Minister of Foreign Affairs to the President's Chief of Staff to governors of Mexican states and a whole variety of other dignitaries. Too many to mention, but again, welcome and thank you for coming. And finally, I want to pay a special tribute to Mariachi Veritas de Harvard. From now on, every forum, I want you here. Terrific way to open and so forth. All right, so we've been fortunate to host a wide variety of extraordinary people in this forum, and tonight is one of those very special, rare moments. Before I introduce tonight's speaker, though, I do want to say one or two words. Obviously, this is an event of great significance. There are people with strong views. We see some protesters on the street and so forth. I just want to make sure everyone in this room understands the ground rules. And essentially, this forum is one of the great places in the United States, perhaps in the world, where people have a chance to speak and be questioned and to talk in a variety of critical issues. One of the ground rules here, in fact, the first rule is no one can speak on this stage if they are not willing to take free and unfettered questions from the audience. And that will happen tonight. That's the rules. If you want to speak at Harvard, in this forum, you take questions. But there's a second rule. When you are here, you are our guest. And while you are our guest, we are here to listen and to give you first the chance to speak and to tell us and to listen from those ideas. And so it's absolutely vital that we have the chance to do both the chance for the speaker to speak and for questioners to ask questions. And if someone violates those rules and, for example, would like to be disruptive or whatever else, I'm afraid we'll have to ask that person to leave or escort them out if they're unwilling to leave. And this is a problem. This is important for three reasons. One is obvious civility. It's partly the way we behave here. Second, it is our chance to listen. It's fair to the audience. It's fair to the speaker. And lastly, as you may have noticed, there's a fair amount of security around here. And we just assume not confuse the security forces. So all of these things are reasons to please do this. Now, our speaker tonight is one of our most accomplished graduates, and he's a graduate of the school's Mason program, which is just about to celebrate its 50th anniversary. He joins people like Ban Ki-moon, the Secretary General of the United Nations, who the President met with earlier today, as well as Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, the President of Liberia, Lee Hsien Loong of Singapore, and a number of others. And as a student, the President Calderon was appreciated by his classmates for his ability to lead people across differences and unite them across differences. Indeed, in an article profiling President Calderon in our alumni journal, one of his classmates was quoted as praising his ability to wrap up complex issues in a simple way and come up with a plan of action. Now, his skills and talents are many, and he has a bachelor's degree in law from Escuela Libre de Derecho, a master's degree in economics from Instituto Tecnológico Autónomo de Mexico, and he's held a variety of positions ranging from federal deputy and numerous leadership positions in the PAN party. And when the party came to power in 2000, he left Congress to head a state-owned development bank and went on to serve in the cabinet of then President Vicente Fox as energy secretary. But I think what is most remarkable about this president has to do with what he has accomplished and what he is trying to accomplish in so short a time. We have a program here at the Kennedy School called Acting in Time. It's dealing with the fundamental problem that governments and leaders everywhere seem either unable or unwilling to tackle the long-term critical problems that ultimately will shape the destiny of their nation, their people, and the world, but require short-term costs in the near term in order to have much larger benefits in the long term. If you'd asked me a few years ago whether Mexico was going to be a place that would take a leadership role in this, I would have said I would have to be skeptical. 3 parties, roughly evenly divided, a president who typically serves one term, who must serve just 1 6-year term. And when I visited Mexico some years back, and I had the opportunity to meet with President Calderon, he wasn't President Calderon then, many people I talked to were very discouraged about the prospects for democracy in Mexico. Not the capacity to elect leaders, but capacity to get things done. And then he was elected, obviously, by a small margin, and yet he has taken on some of the very largest challenges that face Mexico and indeed face the world. Since his election, he's focused on issues including, obviously, crime and drugs, tax policy reform, electoral reform, pension reform. All of these are things that in most governments, any one of which would be an achievement all by itself of enormous proportions for a leader that's going to be there many, many years. This is year 1. We're also working now on climate change and issues around Pemex and a whole variety of other issues. So one of the striking things is that it is possible for a thoughtful, a wise, a powerful leader to come in and forge bridges, find ways to look for solutions. And President Calderon has really been doing that. So it is my special honor to welcome someone the New York Times recently said, even his critics acknowledged he has proved a strong and able leader. That was said this weekend. President Calderon is one of our graduates. We are proud to have him here on our stage. Please join me in welcoming Felipe Calderon, President of Mexico.
Thank you very much for your words, Dean, and it's an honor to me to be here and to see old friends like Professor Jorge Dominguez and other friends here, and of course to see this love Kennedy School of Government. I'm very pleased to be back here at Kennedy School, my alma mater. And today, I want to share with you some thoughts about the first year of my administration, and about the challenges and opportunities that Mexico has for the future. I thank David Elwood, Dean of the Kennedy School, for this invitation, which is really important for me. Let me start what the Dean was saying. How was the situation in the country like a year and 2 months ago? What's different about Mexico today? When I took office, a little more than a year ago, this situation was absolutely different and too complicated. First, the nation was divided by political differences. Organized crime seemed more powerful at threatening the people. They had the control of several parts of the Mexican territory. After decades of economic crisis, the Mexican economy was losing competitiveness and was unable to create enough jobs for Mexican people. Political parties seemed incapable of agreeing on how to restart the engines of growth and development, only to say that 10 years had passed without any significant reform. The last significant reform was in 1960, which was the electoral reform, by the way. The environment on our natural resources were deteriorating at alarming speed. It was clear for me that we needed to start acting immediately in government. And what have we achieved from them? First, we had to face the crime. And we did without hesitations and with full force of the state. And we started operations involving the Army, the Navy, the federal police, the local forces. We took control of all those lands in the territory under the control of gangs. And we hit them. And we hit them really hard. For instance, We have captured more than 22,000 people linked with criminals in this year. We got two unusual records. For instance, we seized the largest amount of cocaine in one single operation, 24 tons in Manzanillo. Other world record is we seized the largest amount of cash coming from the drugs in one single house, in one operation, $205 million in cash from the gangs. We extradited to United States, to American justice, more than 100 Lord drugs from Mexico. In order to give you an idea, we seized in this year, in personal doses, we seized more than 1 billion of personal doses of drugs in Mexico. We know this will be a very long and costly war. We need to spend a lot of money. It's going to pass a lot of time, and we will lose, unfortunately, human lives. But we are absolutely committed in order to clean our house. And if you see dust on the air, don't worry, because we are cleaning the house right now, in this particular moment. A few days ago, Fortino Castillo, a colonel in the Mexican army, died fighting bravely against criminals, and in order to avoid drugs reaching our children, the Mexican children. But thanks to patriots like Castillo, we have recovered areas of the country that were controlled by criminals a few months ago. But we did not stop there. I also sent to the Congress a very important reform, a criminal and justice reform. And the idea is to pass from an accusatorial system to a controversial or adversarial system. We are going to establish oral trials in the country. We are establishing a system more transparent for the people and with better response from the judges. And at the same time, I'm asking for better abilities or capabilities for the government, and especially for police forces. In international arena, my government is seeking to improve the cooperation between Mexico and the United States. Drugs is not only my problem, is not mainly problem of Mexico. Our problem is we are the neighbor of the largest consumer of the world, and we are paying the cost for this, and I am requesting the cooperation of the American government in order to take the common shared responsibility in these fields. We're doing everything in order to rescue our people and in order to avoid the drugs reach our children, and I think that the American government must to do its part in this terrible battle. So we need to work together in order to win this battle, and I'm sure that we will win in the future. Let me tell you about the economic changes in Mexico. Basically, we are setting the fundamentals, principles for economic growth in the country. More importantly, the Dean was talking about how to reach agreements with very different political parties. And now we have broken the political gridlock in the Congress, and we are moving ahead Mexico in terms of the reforms. We reached pension reform for civil servants, which will change the system from a pay-as-you-go system to our individual saving accounts in public servants. That implies to solve the structural problem of public finance in Mexico in the midterm. And this reform is going to allow us to build the development of the country. And at the same time, we worked in the short term, and we passed in the Congress a tax reform, very important reform, which also will enable the federal government to collect 2 points of GDP per year in addition of our oil revenues. And we are going to allocate those resources in order to put more infrastructure in the country and to finance social expenditure as well. And now we are taking more steps to make our country more competitive, stronger even. because our plan is to make Mexico the best place for investment in the world. We know we need a lot of investment. We need to create jobs. We need to grow very quickly in order to provide opportunities for the people. And other things that we are doing is moving the priorities of the government toward infrastructure. For instance, the average of investment in infrastructure in Mexico in the last 10 years is like 2% of GDP per year. With the tax reform, with several changes that we made at the system of infrastructure in order to allow private participation in several fields, we're going to pass to 5.5 points of GDP in investment per year. That implies that Mexico will invest in infrastructure $50 billion per year in the next 5 years. And that will make a huge change in the competitiveness of the economy. I realize that Mexico has tremendous advantages with our geographical position. We are the single emerging market with border with the largest economy in the world. We have 11,000 kilometers of coast, and we are linked to Asia and Europe. So we have a net of free trade agreements, and we can offer merchandise to a market of 1 billion consumers all the world. So we have a great opportunity. And my idea is to connect Mexico ocean to ocean, border to border, with roads, highways, trains, and airports, ports, and we are working really hard in this one. One example is, in order to finance this program, I launched last week a special national infrastructure fund, and I will allocate in a trust several assets of the government. And with those assets, I will finance another high roads and highways in the country. Last year, we allocate in private sector 3 highways in Mexico, the first of this program, and we were expecting to collect more or less $2 billion with this package by concession, and we collect more than $4 billion in the first operation. So there is a lot of people waiting and wanting to invest in Mexico in this infrastructure program. Other things, we are working in other sectors to make our economy more competitive. For instance, we are allocating the highest amount ever for agricultural sector, almost $20 billion this year. We are fostering housing sector. Our plan is to allocate 6 million housing loans. During my administration, we started with more than 1 million housing loans last year. And we are putting in special attention for poorest people. And for instance, I started a new program in order to provide a subsidy for poorest families. And the idea is to build a loan with very low interest rates and very long term. And at the same time, the government, the federal government, is providing subsidies so they are able to make the down payment and start to be owner of new house. And this is a special program fostering the housing sector in Mexico. And we are getting some results in the first year in several fields. For instance, last year we reached a record in terms of foreign direct investment. We received more than $23 billion in foreign direct investment, which is the highest foreign direct investment in Mexico, and is almost 25% higher than the previous year. During last year, 800,000 new jobs were created in the country, which is the second largest amount of new jobs in one single year for Mexico. And talking about our international reserves at Central Bank, we reached more than $80 billion at Central Bank, which is even more than the country's entire foreign debt. So we are absolutely sure about the perspective of our economy. And we are making strides to transform Mexico in a very competitive nation. And we can see that even in some index. For instance, the World Economic Forum has an index in terms of competitiveness, the Global Competitiveness Index, and Mexico rose 6th position in the Global Competitiveness Index from the World Economic Forum last year. So in sum, our goal is to make Mexico the best place for investment and a really developed nation. Some forecasts, like Goldman Sachs Outlook, say that Mexico will be the 5th largest economy in the world by the year 2040, and I'm convinced and committed in order to get that. Now, let me talk about social policy in Mexico. First, analyzing what is happening in my country in this field. And we started analyzing public policy, and there is some public policy that are working really well. And for instance, in the last 10 years, people living in extreme poverty has decreased from 34 million people to 14 million people. So 20 million people in 10 years live from extreme poverty. So that policy is correct. So that's why we are maintaining those social programs that have been successful. And at the same time, we are also improving those programs and put in place new in order to address the problems that we have. Other very important social program is the so-called Seguro Popular. We have some traditional mechanism of social security, for instance, the Mexican Institute for Social Security. But this institution only covers the people working in the formal market. So there are a lot of people without any kind of security, and President Fox, my predecessor, started the Seguro Popular, which covered the people without any kind of social security. And Fox led me the Seguro Popular, covering more or less 14 million people. Last year, the first year of my government, we reached 22 million people, and our goal is to cover 37 million people by the year 2010, and we are going to reach universal health care in Mexico at the end of my administration. Other field, I made in order to put that in place, we grew up the budget for health more than 60% in 1 year. I made a commitment with the people in Mexico, and I said in campaign that no child born since I took office will lack proper medical attention and medicine during his or her lifetime. And in fact, since the first day of my government, every child who is born in Mexico has the right to have a Medicare, a special insurance per life. And we are putting in that program more than 1 million children in the last 14 months. We have not left behind our senior citizens. We are providing economic support, more or less like $600 per year per person, to elderly people in every rural community in the country. I mean, in every town with less than 10,000 people, every single person over 70 years is receiving this money for the personal support and his family. I strongly believe that attaining growth and welfare today should not compromise the future of the generations to come. And all this program, we put it in place with zero deficit in public finance. So we are working really hard in that. We are trying to close the gap not only between poor and rich, but also between the man and nature. And we are working really hard in environmental issues in Mexico. I do believe on that. For instance, we have launched a very innovative programs in order to make the provision, the payment of environmental service a source of income for indigenous people. So the indigenous people in Mexico who is owner of woods or forest rain, they used to cut it in order to feed some corn or something like that, and we are losing more or less 300,000 hectares per year in woods and rainforests. So last year we started a different program, and we are paying money, environmental services to those people. And the condition is you need to keep your forest, you need to keep wood, and even if you want to reforest, I'm going to pay it to you. So we are replanting, we are reforesting a very good part of these lands. Last year we reforested 600,000 hectares, the double that we usually lose every year. United Nations, the Dean mentioned Ban Ki-moon, launched a special program so-called 1 billion tree campaign. Well, we accept the invitation of United Nations, and we planted last year 250 million trees in Mexico, 1/4 of the total goal of the United Nations for the world. So we are working really hard. There is another idea that the developing countries has not any obligation with this strategy against climate change. I not agree. I don't agree with that. I do believe that developing countries, we have the same responsibility with the environment, differentiated but common responsibility on that. So we started a national strategy against climate change, and we are moving other nations inside the G5 in order to get more commitment in this field. And in this area, we are improving as well. For instance, there is 2 indexes in terms of the performance of the country in relationship with the environment, and we were ranked last year in 4th place by this institution, German Watch, 4th place in terms of commitment with environment. And there is another one here in the States, well, in the competition, Yale University, and we also rose 20 places in the index of Yale's University related to environment. So, dear friends from Kennedy School at Harvard University, what I want to say is Mexico now has a clear path. We know where we are going, and we know how to get there. What's different about Mexico today? Well, we made a lot of reforms, tax reform, pension reform, judicial reform, electoral reforms, but probably I have another more easy answer to this. Mexico has a clear vision about its future, and we are taking great steps to achieve our future. I believe that it is possible to transform Mexico from a Mexico threatened by criminality and violence to a country in which our children can live, study, and play peacefully. I believe that it's possible to transform Mexico from a country incapable of creating jobs into one with high, sustained economic growth. That is absolutely possible. It's possible to transform Mexico from a nation that loses the best of its people to migration into a nation capable of generating opportunities for all Mexicans in their own soil. From a Mexico marked by irresponsibility in the management of natural resources into a clean Mexico that contributes to global sustainability. It is possible to transform Mexico, and I am determined to have a government that fully assumes the challenge of leading the nation to a different and better future, and we are working really hard on that. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very, very much, Mr. President. And as promised, now we turn to questions and answers. There are microphones located in 4 locations. It's easy to figure out where they are now. One here, a second one up here, a third one there, and a 4th microphone right here. Now, just a couple of additional thoughts. Questions here, good questions have 3 characteristics. First, the person starts by identifying themselves. Second, they are short, containing just one thought. And third, a good question ends with a question mark. And so with that, let me just start right here. Identify yourself and ask the question.
Thank you very much. My name is Daniel Balmori, and I am an undergraduate student at Harvard College. I'm studying government and anthropology of human rights, and I have a special interest in Latin America. And in regard to the situation of Mexican immigration, you're recently quoted in the Los Angeles Times as saying, no matter their immigration status, they're human beings with dignity and rights that should be respected. My question is, how can you support a policy that would make it easier for Mexicans to come legally to the United States for reasons of economic desperation, while your country has indefinitely detained and denied a voice to Central American and Cuban immigrants who arrived to Mexico for an equally significant reason, seeking political refuge, basic freedoms, and similar struggles for economic relief, and who naturally deserve the same dignity?
Well, several questions. But anyway, David, first, I don't want to be a president that enjoy the people, watching the people live in the country. Every migrant who leaves Mexico, it's lose for Mexico. It's one family without a father, it's one child without his father, it's one son without their parents. You can see the small village in Mexico, and you can see only older people, only some women, and some kids. I'm not enjoying migration, but you can understand clearly what are the nature of this phenomenon. And I don't know if you're undergraduate, maybe I hope you were going to study here at Kennedy School or in the economics field, but the point is like a textbook example. You have 2 economies. One economy is intensive in capital, which is American economy. Other economy is intensive in labor, which is Mexican economy. We have 3,000 kilometers of border. We are part of the same place in the world. So we have clearly, we are 2 complementary economies. And that phenomenon, it's impossible to stop. And what I'm looking for, I'm not trying to allocate in people here. I'm fighting really hard in order to preserve the opportunities for people in Mexico. My duty is to make job opportunities for Mexican people in Mexico. And instead to see the people crossing and looking for capital in the United States, I'm working really hard in order to attract capital to Mexico. Now, the American economy is suffering. But if you take the point of view that the solution for this situation, the lack of competitiveness of American economy, is closing the border, you are making a very, very big mistake. You can see the performance of the economy in Asia or Europe, and all those economies are integrating in a regional form. So the only one single chance that we have as North American economies, including Mexico, Canada, and the United States, is to integrate our markets in order to be more productive, more competitive, and it's the one single chance we have to compete with those countries. Other thing is, I think human being has human rights, regardless their condition or their migratory condition. Human being is human being. Of course, I recognize the right of every country to enforce the law in its own territory, but it's absolutely different from don't be respectful to human rights. Talking about people migrating to Mexico, we are starting a new policy. I met with the new president of Guatemala, and we talked that we are going to make our border a border of opportunities. I do believe that Central American workers provide benefits for Mexican people. Like I do believe that Mexican people provide benefits for American workers. And it's not my quote. You can reach this, you can find this research in the Center of Economic Advisors, the Council of Economic Advisors of the White House. This research says that migrants are absolutely complementary to native workers here. And every year they are increasing the income of the native people in $30,000 per year, $1 million per year. Second, there is an idea that the migrants are too, it's a very expensive to have migrants, but the same research says that the net present value in the tax relationship is the difference between the taxes that the migrants pay and the services that they receive is a net benefit from the American taxpayers of $80,000 per migrant in this study. What I want to say is I'm not looking for more migrants. I'm looking for the rise of my people. I'm looking for integrate our economies. I'm looking for the prosperity of Mexico and the prosperity of the United States as well.
Thank you. Right up here.
Thank you. My name is Don Kurth. I'm a mid-career student in the MPA program here at the Kennedy School. I'm also the mayor of the city of Rancho Cucamonga in Southern California. My question, actually, my first question was about the immigration issues, but I've got a second question, and that is, how did your stay at the Kennedy School here help you to do a better job as president of Mexico?
Thank you. Now, I'm sure that you are enjoying the Kennedy School
You bet.
and the program, and I did exactly the same some years ago. What I learned a lot from here. I can remember several aspects, but most of them are linked with first, the economic issue. I remember Jeffrey Frankel was a great professor, and I learned a lot from him. And actually, he has a very good study about these complementary economies that we were talking about. By the way, he was supporting the idea to have one single coin, one single currency. Both countries, I was not agree with that. Other fields that were quite interesting for me right now are, for instance, leadership. I didn't like it at the beginning. I said it's too American, no? But at the end, I really appreciate the lecture. And I learned a lot from that. For instance, for the reforms, if I remember, the name of the lecture was like mobilizing people and resources. And what I study is, in order to move forward reforms, you need to mobilize people before. For instance, if we need to pass a tax reform, we need to explain to people what we are going to do with the money. And that's a crucial issue. And I explained to people, the name of the reform was Tax Reform for the Poorest People. And people understand and support the reform, even any tax reform is too popular, you know? And so on. And I used to be president of the PAM previous to my time at Kennedy School. And I used to say, well, I don't need to learn negotiation. No? I always negotiate in my political life. But it was not true. When I went to a negotiation lecture, I learned a lot, and I understood my mistakes in the past. So, well, enjoy the Kennedy School. I think it's a marvelous school, and with the best teacher, people, and spirit, which is necessary to be official in government.
Right up here.
Hello, good evening, Mr. President. My name is Fausto Gurrea. I'm a Mexican student. I'm really proud to have you here, and I think I can speak for all the Mexicans in the school. My question is, we know that the recession in the United States is coming. What is the action plan that the Mexican government has to respond to that? And are we thinking also to increase the level of innovation and research and development in the country? We know that China and India are players that are competing to get exports to the U.S. market. Do we have a clear plan to address that issue?
Well, we are in troubles right now. I was this morning at Federal Reserve. But anyway, what I used to say is, well, we are depending a lot on American economy. 84 of our export are export inside NAFTA. So what I used to say to the people is, well, we have problems in one engine, so we need to start another engine. So if you have not moving the American economy, you need to start to export to other parts of the world. So for instance, the export to Europe last year grew in Mexico by more than 30%. The export to other Latin American countries grew by 25%, in the same to Asia, and so on. Second, you need to strengthen the internal market. And that is the reason why I'm putting a lot of attention in infrastructure. It's a powerful tool. It's very powerful because you can create jobs in several regions of the country, and you can increase the demand with the public expenditure, but at the same way, there are a lot of investors in the world looking for safe places to invest. There are a lot of mutual funds looking for long-term investment, and the best investment in the long term is infrastructure. So, third, as I say, we are applying in the housing market with more than 1 million loans mortgage per year. It's another source of growth for the country. We are supporting agricultural sector, and the agricultural in Mexico grew more than the average of the economy. So what we need to do is to move forward. Yes, we depend a lot from the American economy, but even with this scenario that everybody's talking about, a possible recession here, we are expecting a growth almost 3% in this year, which is not bad. Finally, we are trying to preserve the fundamentals of the economy. As I said, we have zero deficit in Mexico, and we have probably the second lowest inflation in all the continent. By first time in history, Mexican inflation was lower than the American inflation, 3.7. And it was very lower respect to other countries, so we are trying to do our work. And the point, Fausto, is, as the dean was saying, you need to think about the future. And the future is not the next 1 or 2 quarters. The future is the next 2 or 3 decades. And we are thinking in what Mexico we want by the year 2030. We have a global long-term vision, a plan called Mexico 2030. And in that plan, there is the Mexico we want, a cleaner Mexico, safer Mexico, a more prosperous Mexico, more fair country, and we are working on that. So think in the future, act in the present, that's the rule to be government. And maybe the crisis in the United States could pass as soon as possible.
Thank you. Right over here.
Good evening, President Calderon. It's an honor to be here with you. My name is Paula Villaseñor. I'm also from Mexico. I'm studying the MPID program here at the Kennedy School. Considering the importance of education for a country's future development, I would like to ask you, what are your thoughts regarding the current situation of the public education system in Mexico, and whether your administration has any reform in mind to improve it? Thank you.
The last part, what?
Whether your administration has any reform in mind to improve it. Thanks.
No, that would be a surprise, no? No, well, I know that this is the basis of the development, and we need to move forward. But the problem in Mexico's educational system was we have a very poor quality. And one of the things we're doing is we are linking our standards with the international standards, especially with the PISA standard. So in our national plan, the measurement of education will be PISA standard. It will be really difficult. And again, we need to mobilize people and resources. So we're talking with the union. It's a very controversial relationship. You know why. But my point is, you cannot promote a reform in the educational system without the teachers. So you need to bring in the table the teachers. You need to bring in the table the parents. We need to bring in the table the local governors. There are 2 local governors here, and I really appreciate their presence here. And we need to reach an agreement on what kind of education we want for Mexico. And we're talking on that. For instance, the union have serious claims in terms of salaries. And I say, I agree with that. You want to earn more? It's okay for me. But in order to improve the quality of education of the country, I will link your income with equality in the classroom. And I need to find a way to reach a really strong coalition in the country for that matter. I really worry about that. It's not easy. We are talking of more than 1 million teachers in the country and a lack of accountability in several fields, but well, we need to work a lot on that. And I'm sure I could count with your help in order to promote that reform. No?
Right over here.
Hello, Felipe. My name is Pedro Guevara. I was a mid-career MPA, a Mason Fellow, classmate of Felipe, a member of the Latin Rumba Caucus in those days.
That's true. That's true.
My question is, I don't want to create diplomatic problems to Felipe, but I would like to know his opinion about the government of Hugo Chavez. As you know, he has been
your neighbor.
Yes. He has been exporting revolution to other countries. In the last year, it's amazing the amount of money that Venezuela has been investing in weapons. They are creating military bases in Bolivia, Ecuador, and other countries related to Chavez. I would like to know if you think there's something other Latin American governments or the American government can do to deal with this problematic relation.
Well, I understand your concern because you, as Peruvian, you are, and like a lot of people in Latin America, is worried about what is happening. It's not easy issue, especially to speak publicly about it. And but my point is, let me talk a little bit about my strategy. My strategy is to recover the position of Mexico in Latin America because we lost a lot of power in the past for several reasons. I don't want to talk about it. But the idea is we need to recover our position. We need to assume some kind of leadership in the region. And at the same time, we need to stand for values and principles in the region. Of course, one of the restrictions I have is we need to be very careful and respectful about the decisions of other peoples and governments, including Venezuela. So what I will demand is respect from any single government, and that is the case of Venezuela, and I will offer respect as well. And a very interesting question is what happened in the referendum 3 months ago in Venezuela. And I think that the people is responding about their future. And what we need to do is to stand by principles in terms of democracy, human rights, regardless what is exactly the concrete situation of each country. Let me be honest in this, Pedro. I want to make a strong relationship with all the countries in Latin America, including Cuba and Venezuela, because there is the only way to have the relationship of Mexico with all the countries. And at the same time, is the only way to move forward the continent to those principles. So I need to be sure that any of those countries can count with Mexico in order to foster our relationship. And maybe we can talk later about other aspects of this.
Good evening, Mr. President, and thank you for coming and speaking with us this evening. I'm Jay Lundy, a junior government concentrator at the college, and You won a close election, and we're going through that right now. Can you just talk about the relationship you hope to have with the next commander-in-chief in America? And also, if you don't mind, who's your person you like to work with?
Okay.
Be sure to answer that one.
Well, what I'm looking for is a good relationship with North America and the people and the government of this great country. And probably we need to face a really grown idea that we are enemies. Probably the worst thing that happened in this country is this like an anti-Mexican or anti-immigrant spirit or perception in the people, and we need to change that. I need to change in Mexico the perception that the Americans are the enemy, and it's important to change the perception that the Mexicans are the enemy. We are neighbors, we are friends, and we must be allies in order to get progress and prosperity for our people. And whoever will be the next president of the United States, this country can count with Mexico in order to deal in that direction. I do believe in prosperity, and I can imagine our region, North America. And the question is, how can we want to see this region in 20 years or 30 years? And I can imagine a prosperous North America, meaning by that Mexico, Canada, and United States. But the only way to do that is to strengthen democracy, human rights, and market. And when I say market, I say free market for goods and services, free market for capitals, and free labor market. Because that's the only way that other countries can rise in their economy. I know this is a very sensitive issue, and I want to be very respectful over the decisions of the American people. I know, as I say, I recognize and respect the right of every single government to apply and enforce the law in its own territory, but I want to switch the perspective about the future. We are not the enemies. The Americans are not the enemies of Mexican people. We can be a powerful allies in this, and that's my idea in order to work with the next president of the United States.
Right up here.
Good evening, Mr. President. I'm Steve Cohen. I'm a second-year MPP student here at the Kennedy School, and I want to ask you a question about getting into politics. So many of us have passions or a desire to serve in political office one day. Love to hear about any experiences that you had that shaped your desire to run, and perhaps any advice that you have for many of us budding politicians who have desires to help shape our own countries one day.
Say again, excuse me. The question is, and the question is?
So, advice for those of us who would like to get into public office someday, any experiences that you had that shaped your desire to run?
Okay.
And then any advice generally?
The main key issue is you need to believe in something, because people don't follow don't follow somebody who really doesn't believe in something. So you need to believe strongly in the future of your country. You need to believe in people. You need to believe in principles, and you need to express that in any political campaign or in any action of your day. The task of the government on a daily basis is to work for a dream. And you need to dream on that. You need to be able to imagine every single day what could be your goal for the country. And in that proportion, the people are going to start to believe in you or not. So you can see the lack of credibility of politicians in all the world, and the point is the lack of dreams and the lack of imaginations and the lack of authentic feelings in politicians. So the first task is you need to dream something and hard in the future of your people. The second is you need to be honest and coherent in your life, your actions, your words, your thoughts. Third, you need to be brave, because we have tremendous challenges in my country, for instance, organized crime. It was not easy to take the decision to face them. It's very risky for everybody. And I know that a lot of people do prefer to ignore the problem. You cannot ignore the problems. You need to face them. And as the dean was saying, you need to pay the cost in the short term for the big deals. At the end of the day, I hope to be remembered by my kids and my people like a president who decided to act in his moment in order to build a future. And that's the idea to be a politician and public services, in my point of view.
It's tempting to end on that note, but this will have to be the last question.
Buenas noches, Presidente Calderón. I'm a sophomore at the college. I'm from Guatemala. My question is related to a question you asked before. I was very happy to hear that you're willing to take a leadership in the region as a counterpart of Hugo Chávez's leadership. However, he's offering a very convenient ALBA agreement, a trade zone. He's offering very convenient oil subsidies for nations, and for nations that do not have oil reserves and are going through a huge energy crisis. This is very, very convenient, and it pressures our governments to lean towards Hugo Chávez's policies. Could you present concrete reforms, concrete actions that will be more appealing for our governments to lean towards Mexico and not towards Venezuela?
I see your point. Let me tell you this. I realize that I know that we need to be more active and to have more solidarity with our neighbors, especially with Guatemala and other Central American countries. But it's not a question about how much money you put in this relationship, because Latin America is not in sale. The countries has not a price. The thing that we need to do is to transform our region in a prosperous one. The thing that we need to do is to make the right decisions in order to foster economy. We have a good relationship, and I'm following the so-called Plan Puebla-Panama, and I want to transform it in a regional developing program. And the idea is to establish this program of infrastructure. The idea is we want to go even to our Central America, and we are building electricity facilities in order to bring electricity to Central America from Mexico. That's the idea about what we need to do. But let me tell you what I learned from a classmate at Kennedy School several years ago. He was from Singapore. And I was talking about this so-called tragedy, Mexican tragedy, living so close to the United States. And I said, we lost part of our territory. Well, we are too close to the imperium, and it was a very bad luck for Mexico, and so on and on and on. And he told me, well, how many kilometers you have of border with the United States? 3,000. Well, I really like to have 300 kilometers of border. And he started to explain me what happened with Singapore after its independence. He told me that the new prime minister crying on TV was explaining to the people that Singapore was independent. And what is the reason why he was crying? Because Singapore has not oil, has not land, has not agricultural sector. Singapore has not even drinking water in that year. But people of Singapore started to think in a different way, started to work a lot, started to study. And a very, very, very small city like Singapore, a port, started to grow. And now Singapore has 3 or 4 times the income of Mexico. And we have resources. We have coast, we have oil, we have culture, we have identity. The question for me is, how can we change the attitude about the future? It's not a question of oil. It's not a question to buy the willingness of the government, giving them some barrels a day. I would like to have more cooperative and comprehensive relations in that. I signed recently the San Jose Agreement in order to provide financial supply and aids to Central American countries. But the idea is we need to turn the switch about the future. We can work together, yes. Is going Mexico to assume its role in the region? Yes. But the idea is we are not bidding for the support for other countries. We are going to help any other country in order to make our region prosperous, and we are not competing with Chavez in that manner. We have not plans to buy the support of anything. Our plan is to rescue the dignity and the hope of Latin America. That's the idea, and this is a question of principles and values.
Sorry, no. Por favor, please. You are not, we have to. No. Lo siento. Gracias. And on that note, I just ask that you remain seated for security reasons as the president is escorted out. But thank you for joining us for one of the most memorable nights in this most memorable forum. Thank you all very much, and my special thanks to President Felipe Calderon.